You're listening to Snippets from the Summit with your host, Scott McKay.
Oh, how's it going, gentlemen? This is your main man, Scott McKay, coming at you again with another snippet from the summit as part of the Mountaintop podcast from X&Y Communications. Now, listen, guys, today I'm going to talk about something that would probably cause your first grade teacher to whack me on the wrist with a ruler, but I don't care because I think I'm right and I think I can explain myself. You remember back in first grade, your teacher told you you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and you're supposed to listen more than you talk because that's how you learn? Well, you know what? Since we're grown-ass men, I've got a confession to make that comes from years of practice, not only in my own personal life, but also in my coaching practice, quite literally. I find that we as men learn by talking things out. In other words, you can spend your time listening to other people or, even reading the words. Anything that's informational input, whether it's told to you, shown to you, or, you read out of a book, would be learning. And I think everybody acknowledges that. That's pretty basic stuff. But it's that part about talking to learn that, it may not be something that is in line with how everybody learns. I mean, everybody's different. Some people are visual learners. And I've noticed that especially the people who claim to be visual learners are very vociferous about it. They tend to tell you that they learn by watching or by seeing, especially when people are trying to explain to them with words or get them to read something. But it's this idea of learning by talking that I think is extremely underrated, if not flat out ignored by a lot of guys. And I'll tell you, there's already evidence of the truth of what I'm talking about, even in pop culture. You remember the old TV show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And Regis Philbin would always take his time with the contestants, especially when they got into the real high stakes questions like, the $32,000 or $64,000 ones and up. And Regis would often say to the contestant, you want to talk this through. You want to talk this out. Not only because, dead air makes for terrible television, right? But because there's actual value in listening to yourself make points. Now, that whole idea of listening to yourself is another frequently used phrase, especially when people are in conflict of some sort with each other. One person will say to the other, just listen to yourself. You don't make any sense, or you're being angry, or you're being unreasonable. And indeed, sometimes when the person listens to the words coming out of their mouth, they realize they're indicting themselves with their words. Because it sounds one way in our brains, and it sounds another way when, like Regis would have said, we talk it out. Now, as a professional coach, a lot of times people think what I do is teach people, and they sit down, shut up, and listen to me tell them what they're going to do or what they should think, et cetera, et cetera. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, gentlemen. A lot of times, the value of having a coach like me comes from being able to talk things out in a safe place where you're not going to be judged. Now, do I issue tough love? Do I challenge people? Yeah, otherwise you could just replace me with ChatGPT, and I know guys are trying to do that. But it's that process of saying what you mean out loud that really allows you to listen to yourself. There's tremendous value in this. Anytime you've got a decision to make, I know it sounds literally crazy and there's a stigma tied to talking to oneself, right? But if you say out loud what your thoughts are, even if you record them into a microphone and play them back as if it was a podcast to yourself, right? You're going to learn about your thoughts, about your feelings, about the decisions you've made in the past, or even any pending decisions that you have to make in the near future. You can even talk about your far-flung future, what your plans are, what your ambitions are, and flat out see if you make sense to yourself as you talk things out. A lot of people journal, writing things out can be very helpful to you to gain clarity on what you've done and what you're going to do. But I really believe the power is in talking, hearing your own voice as if you're really, truly speaking something into reality. And when you have someone you can confide in as you talk these things out, so much the better because you'll get feedback on it. Now, when it comes to relating to women, I think we as guys already realize by now, especially if you've been listening to these podcasts, reading my newsletters, and getting a few of my programs here and there, that men are men, women are women, and even though we're all human here, Women process information through the lens of femininity as we process information through the lens of masculinity. So, sometimes there may be a disconnect. You can talk through what you plan to say to a woman, even a woman you're planning on approaching and asking out, and kind of get a feel for it through hearing the words resonate, hearing them echo off of your walls. If this is going to really make a woman feel safe and comfortable, if what you're saying is really going to attract her, or whether you need to fine-tune it a little. Just speaking those words really will help you get a much better handle on that and gain some clarity. So I recommend, even though you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, that you actually do talk things out with yourself or with a coach or with a best friend. And certainly for you guys who are already married, you and your wife should be best friends and be able to talk things out like this before you move forward through life as a team, right? But hey, I practically guarantee that once you hear yourself talk, you'll gain clarity. And sometimes if you explain things to yourself and really talk through your reasoning, you'll gain insights. You'll gain ideas you can use. You'll gain actionable steps because your train of thought came out of your mouth and now you've heard yourself speak these things. And why is that? Well, here comes the silver bullet. Because it's harder to lose your train of thought and let your brain wander when you're focused on speaking your thoughts out. That is probably the biggest reason why talking something out causes you to learn more about your situation and about yourself than you may have thought. Even if it's really better defined as realization than actual learning, your brain processes information differently once it's heard you speak these words. And to me, that really does fall under the definition of learning. Give it a try, gentlemen, and let me know how it works out. And indeed, if you want to talk about that or anything else, Scott@mountaintoppodcast.com. Be good out there.
As always, visit mountaintoppodcast.com for more.